Hello, welcome to another Fabula Ultima class feature. This is the Pilot, a guide by Fabula Points, me! So, the Pilot not only is the last kind of class in the Techno Fantasy book, but this is the biggest one in terms of pages covering it by far. So, we have 12 pages to go through. So I'm going to tackle this a little bit differently than videos before. There'll be some bits that I'm going to skip entirely, some bits I'm going to gloss over, but there will be good reasons for the ones I skip, I promise. So your pilot is, as you'd expect, it's a pilot. So it's like the biker, mecha pilot, sky pirate. It is a class that lets you have a vehicle and either ride it or enter it. So the free benefits: you permanently increase your maximum hit points by 5, and you gain the ability to equip martial melee weapons and martial ranged weapons, which is nice. Being able to equip weapons is always good. So the skills, I am going to completely skip for now. I will go back to them. All of the skills interact with your personal vehicle, which is like the pilot's gimmick, and it makes more sense to understand how the vehicle works and then talk about the skills, because we'll understand how it works than it does to learn the skill first and then learn the vehicle afterwards. So, skipping through these quite quickly. There's a special set of rules for the vehicle. So basically, if you want to enter your vehicle during conflict, you have to use the objective action. Your GM may introduce a clock if there are serious obstacles or dangers in the way, but if your personal vehicle is available at the start of conflict, you can enter it immediately before initiative, which is always nice. So if you're caught off guard but it's right there, you don't have to waste a turn. Leaving the vehicle doesn't require an action, but during conflict you have to do it before or after an action and only on your turn. The personal vehicle can have a variable amount of human-sized creatures on it and a bunch of modules, but only the pilot can drive it, and other passengers cannot cover creatures when they perform the guard action. That will make more sense as we go on. And the maximum number of modules enabled at the same time on a vehicle is 3 plus the pilot skill level in personal vehicle. So personal vehicle you can have up to 5, so that means you get up to 8. Pilot may freely reassign personal vehicles enabled and disabled modules outside of conflicts. So that will make more sense later again. So a personal vehicle is a frame that is either a steed, an exoskeleton, or a mecha. Steed is like bikes, small fighter, skateboards. Exoskeleton is power armor and mechanical limbs, and a mecha is like a combat robot, for example. So this choice remains unchanged for the rest of the game, which is very important. So you need to make sure when you're making your pilot that you have a good idea of what you want your pilot to pilot, because rules as written you can't change. Now, I personally would allow someone, say for example if you are a tinkerer and you wanted to make a project to make a new personal vehicle, I would allow that and I'd let you swap, but rules as written, it remains unchanged for the rest of the game. So unless you have a conversation with a GM and they agree that you will be able to make a different one later, you are stuck with it. So that's a very important thing. That's why I've lingered on this point. So the personal vehicle is also not just the frame, it's also a variable number of weapon modules, armor modules, and support modules. And there are ways to quickly change, enable and disable them, but that'll make more sense in a second. Sorry about the cough. So armor modules, basically you don't have access to your armor slot when you are driving your personal vehicle. The slot is occupied by the vehicle's armor module. So in a minute we'll see armor modules where the actual vehicle itself will have defense values, and while you're riding it you take the vehicle's defense, not your own. So as soon as you stop driving the personal vehicle you get your own armor back. And also armor modules that are marked with the star are considered to be martial for the sake of skills and other effects, and they set the pilot's defense and magic defense to fixed scores like martial armor does in the base game, but the pilot can still equip those modules even if they normally lack the ability to equip martial armor, which is huge because you don't have the ability for martial armor as a pilot. Obviously you can equip another class and get it quite easily, but if you're focusing hard on the pilot, you can still equip martial armor modules onto your vehicle. You just can't wear martial armor yourself. Weapon modules work in basically the same way, except instead of your armor slot, it's your hand slots. So you can have weapon module in each slot. You gain your weapons back when you remove it. You can have shields as well, and it also says there are some weapons that are cumbersome, which means you won't be able to use it with one hand. So that's like your two-handed weapons, right? And then it gives some examples where like an axe module can be used with counterattack. So the next page, it still talks about weapons. Because each weapon module is treated as a one-handed weapon, a pilot driving with two enabled weapon modules that share the same category benefits from the rules for two-weapon fighting. And if they have ambidextrous, this can be done with any two enabled weapon modules. So just bear that in mind. If you want two-weapon fighting, you can have that with your vehicle. And then support modules, you cannot have more than one enabled support module of the same name, which is huge. So like you can't have two like shield modules that are doing the same thing. But some support modules are particularly complex and count as two modules, like the two-handed weapon example for the weapons. So damage and repairs. So a pilot's personal vehicle doesn't have its own separate stats and is treated as an extension of the pilot themselves, so there isn't going to be like a stat block particularly for it. It can be damaged or rendered temporarily unusable as a narrative consequence of the pilot's surrender, but cannot be destroyed unless the player agrees to it, so that's huge. Repairing a narratively damaged personal vehicle requires an amount of zenith equal to its pilot's skill level in personal vehicle multiplied by 100. So again, skill level goes up to 5, so that'll be 500 max. On the other hand, rebuilding a destroyed personal vehicle should be achieved as part of the pilot's narrative arc, which is why it should only be destroyed if the player is okay with it. So if you've got a story reason why it was destroyed and you have a story ability to pursue repairing it, then that's going to be a narratively satisfying thing for a pilot to do. Next one, rare modules as rewards. I'm going to completely skip over. This is for game masters to give them ideas to how to reward modules, but we're talking about how the pilot class works, so we're going to skip that. And also gloss over the Tinkerer class. If you want to use it tells you that they might want to use the upgrade hero skill or rules for projects to improve things or invent new ones. So just to keep that in mind and to like let them be able to do that. Next page is sample personal vehicles. So you've got hoverskate, armored motorcycle, assault, exoskeleton, things like that. So the thing to note here, which isn't completely explained, is this 1SL. So that's, you need 1 skill level in personal vehicle to get these enabled, but you need 2 skill levels in personal vehicle to get those enabled because there's some extra that you need to get. But these have steeds, they have mechs, they have exoskeletons, so these are good ideas to start with, and then you can go from there. Now, all that aside, that was a lot, I grant you, and we've not really started yet. So I'm going to talk through the rest of it in more detail, and the rest of what we went over will make more sense with this more detail, okay? So I'm not going to go at that speed, like again, really. So frames. I'm going to read this bit at the bottom first. Passengers indicates how many human-sized creatures the personal vehicle may transport in addition to the pilot. Distance refers to the distance travelled during a travel day, because this has pilots and passengers and distance, right? So the exoskeleton, you don't get any passengers that you can carry apart from yourself, and it does no modifiers to your distance. And this vehicle can have up to 2 weapon modules, 1 armor module, and any number of support modules enabled. And if you use the compression text skill with this personal vehicle, you ignore the IP cost. So I will mention this again when we go over compression tech, so they'll make more sense. The mecha, you can't have any passengers, but it doubles your travel day distance. So you can have 2 weapon modules, 1 armor, and any number of support modules like with the exoskeleton. The steed lets you have up to 1 as the extra passenger, doubles your distance, but only lets you have 1 weapon module and then 1 armor module and any number of support modules equipped. And if you use the heart of the engine skill, which we will talk about later with this personal vehicle, you ignore the MP cost. So if you like the heart of engine skill, taking the steed will make more sense. If you like the compression tech skill, exoskeletons are an easy way to do that. Cool. So armor modules is the short one. So we're going to get that out of the way first, but there's also weapon and support ones. So there are 4 listed here. So flexible plating is your non-martial armor, where it takes your defenses in mind. So it's your dexterity die size +2 and your ins die size +1 for magic defense. The first one was defense, right? And then heavy plating is your higher defense and lower magic defense, and then your standard plating is, or your runic plating is more magic defense than defense, and your standard plating is this one, but the other way around, right? So like kind of similar to how like the core armor works. So it reinstates that these benefits only apply to a pilot who is driving. However, the scores granted by the heavy runic and standard plating modules can be extended to passengers through the expanded plating module. So there is a way to let the person who is riding with you gain these as well. Okay. Weapon modules. There are quite a few, and the shield. But basically these work exactly the same as weapons do. So like the arcane uses dex and willpower, and it has the high roll of +8, your high roll +8 physical damage to the attack. So you can go through these and you can pick which ones suit you, which ones will interact with skills from other classes. Treat this like you would the weapon that you equip. You don't have to equip the same one that you have equipped. So like if you have a blade, some kind of blade already on your person, but you want to have an axe on your pilot like personal vehicle, you can do that. But yeah, so these are the weapons. The machine gun has a lot of stats, the shield has a lot of things to talk about. But yeah, pause it if you want to read these properly. Obviously they're in the book, but I'm going to kind of move on a bit from weapon modules. This is how you attack, and the shield gives you a +2 bonus to defense and magic defense. Okay, support modules. So aerial module, like this is the big customization piece, so I'm going to go over these more. So the aerial module counts as 2 enabled modules. The personal vehicle can fly, and its distance becomes ×3. So obviously this is massive. Flight is such a game changer. Entire videos can be done about flight, right? But while you are driving this personal vehicle, your melee attacks can target flying creatures, and none of the creatures inside your personal vehicle can be targeted by melee attacks unless the attacker is flying or is able to reach flying targets, which is the same for normal flying rules. These benefits do not apply when your personal vehicle is inactive or grounded, while you are in crisis, or while you are covering another creature with the guard action. Additionally, if a creature aboard this personal vehicle suffers air, bolt or ice damage during a conflict, the benefits of this module cease until the start of your next turn, which is the same as kind of flight. Anti-element. So each time you enable this module on a personal vehicle, choose a damage type: air, bolt, earth, fire or ice. Creatures aboard this personal vehicle are being treated resistant to the chosen damage type as long as this module remains enabled. So the important thing to kind of remember here is you can't equip 2 support modules of the same name. So choosing this fire doesn't rename it anti-element fire, so you can only have this once. However, if you disable it and re-enable it, you can choose a new damage type, but you can't shove 5 on here and have all 5 resistances. It doesn't work like that. Advanced targeting. While driving this personal vehicle, you gain a +2 bonus to your accuracy checks and to magic checks for offensive spells you cast, which is pretty awesome. Everyone likes extra to hit. Yeah, it's pretty good. Counter strike. After a creature aboard this personal vehicle is hit by a ranged attack, specifically ranged attack, if you are driving this vehicle, you may spend 1 inventory point. If you do, the attacker suffers 10 physical damage after their attack has been resolved, and this amount increases by 5 if you're level 20 or 10 if you're level 40. So this is different to like the counter strike we've got in the hero, in like with the weapon master, right, where it has to be like, I think it's an even number and then you can attack back. This is if they hit you, you spend an inventory point and they take damage, so you don't even have to roll for it. Evacuation or excavation. It's not evacuation, excavation. The personal vehicle can burrow through the ground and is equipped with bright lights. So if you feel like digging is a thing you want to do, you can do it here. Bright lights is probably going to be useful if you're driving around at night, right? Expanded plating only works with the mecha and the steed frames, so it doesn't work with the exoskeleton. So while you're driving this personal vehicle, if it has the heavy runic or standard plating enabled, all passengers may treat their magic defense and magic defense scores as being equal to those provided by the armor module in question. So that's been explained before. Magistatic. After you pay the MP cost of an Arcanum spell or verse, which is nice to see, if you are driving this personal vehicle and have an arcane weapon equipped, you recover 5 mind points or 10 mind points if the cost was equal to or higher than 30 mind points. So it's a way of getting mind points back. So if you're going to be a spell slinger or a verse singer, it's a nice to have. You know, it's not incredible, but gaining MP back is always a good thing. So the power module is only for exoskeleton and mecha frames, so you can't have this with the steed. While driving this vehicle, you gain a +2 bonus to all opposed checks that rely on brute force or physical resistance. So this is like imagine if you're like fighting something else and you can push against it, you gain a +2. Rapid interface. When you enter this personal vehicle on your turn during a conflict, you may immediately perform an additional action. So this one, like, you can enter the personal vehicle at the start of a conflict. So like, if like there are obviously there are skills that you can use to get your personal vehicle back, and you might want to be able to use this, but if you kind of plan ahead, you don't need this. So this is like maybe one to avoid unless you really think you need it. Seafarer means it can travel on water and underwater, so if you want a submarine, this is the way to go. Seat, which is the mech and steed only, it can transport an additional human-sized passenger, so that means the steed can pick up an extra 2. So if you had the seat and the aerial module, then 3 of you could fly around, right? The next one's secondary offensive, is the exoskeleton and mecha frames only, so it doesn't work with steed. Each time you enable this module on your personal vehicle, choose one of its disabled weapon modules. As long as the chosen module is disabled and this module is enabled, you may use an action to perform a free attack with that weapon module. So this is a way to be able to attack more often, or with extra weapons. Sensor. While driving this vehicle, you're getting a +2 to open checks made to examine nearby creatures, items and locations. So you could take this with like the aerial module, which is very overpowered, to be like a scouting kind of pilot. And then finally turbo. While driving this personal vehicle, you're getting +2 to all opposing checks that rely on speed and rapid maneuvers. So this is the quick one, this is the examine one, and then that's the strength one, right? So there's lots of options there. So that's all the modules and how they work. So to kind of summarize everything again, you have different frames, exoskeleton, mecha and steed. Each one it dictates how many support weapon, armor and support modules you can have enabled. The amount of modules you can have is dependent on is 3 plus your pilot's skill level in personal vehicle, so you can have up to 8 modules enabled at the same time. You can have extra that are disabled if you're like collecting modules. So yeah, that's kind of how it works, and like its defenses and weapons replace yours. So that was a lot. So take a quick drink. So to go back to the skills and then to heroic skills, the first one is compression tech. So we had a skill before. Which one was compression tech? Exoskeleton interacts with compression tech, so you ignore the IP cost if you have an exoskeleton here, right? So as long as there is no one aboard your personal vehicle, you may have it safely disappear from the game world at any time. What magic or technology allows it? There's a bit of flavour there. If your personal vehicle is not present in the game world and you are in a space big enough to contain it, you may perform the inventory action and spend 2 inventory points to have the vehicle appear near you and enter it for free. So this again, if it was an exoskeleton, you don't have to spend the inventory points to do that. So there's only one skill point you can put in this, so it's quite an easy kind of point to allocate. Flexible configuration is the next. You can have up to 4 skill points in it. When you perform the equipment or guard action while driving your personal vehicle, you may choose up to skill level of its enabled modules and disable them. If you do, you choose up to an equal amount of disabled modules and enable them. So this is if you need to hot swap between all your modules, this is the way to do it. So you might, for example, not want to hot swap, and you might only have like a few modules and you really like them, so you don't have to take skill levels in this if that's the case, but if you want maximum flexibility, this is the one you want, right? Heart in the engine. At the start of your turn during conflict, if you are driving your personal vehicle, you may spend 10 mind points. If you do, choose one option. The next time you deal damage during this turn, you deal skill level times 2 extra damage, so up to 6. Or the next time you suffer damage before the start of your next turn, that damage is reduced by skill level times 2, so again up to 6, applied before damage affinities, or you recover from either slow or weak status effect, your choice, okay? So again, like with compression tech, heart of the engine is, I believe it's the steed? Yeah, the steed. If you have a steed, you ignore the MP cost, right? So this is potentially massive. So it doesn't say you use an action. It's just at the start of your turn you can spend 10 mind points, but if you're a steed you don't spend any mind points, and then you can deal extra damage, or you can take less damage, or you can recover from status effects, right? So if you have a steed, this is huge, because you can just do this all the time, and like extra damage is, you know, is always useful, especially because the steed has less weapon modules that you can enable on it at once. Personal vehicle is your bread and butter. When you acquire the skill, you gain a personal vehicle with a frame of your choice and 3 different modules of your choice. Whenever you acquire the skill again, you acquire 2 additional modules of your choice. So that means if you start with 3 for 1 skill point, there's 4 more left, so you can have up to 8 extra modules, so 11 in total if you max personal vehicle. And then finally, strong grip. When you perform an accuracy check with a weapon module, you may replace one of the attributes with might, such as might and willpower for arcane modules. So you can use that to so let's just get an example, because we skipped over it. Let's go to a weapon, let's find something with might and something else. Dexins, nothing has might, so you can't double up on might, so I was wrong. But if you have a high might and high dex, you can not have willpower or inst, you can go might and dex, for example. Like, you get the idea. So that was the skills. So like, this is a lot of information to take in, but we're not done. Heroic skills, there are 3. So each one kind of works with a different kind of part of the pilot. So I personally, when I'd start making a pilot, I'd pick which heroic skill I liked the most, and I'd work towards that. But dynamic synchronization. At the start of your turn during a conflict, if you are driving your personal vehicle, you may choose one option. You synchronize with another player character who is present on the scene and driving their own personal vehicle, or you synchronize with another player character who is a passenger of your personal vehicle. So you have to, so obviously, like, if you have another pilot, that's awesome. Otherwise you'd have to either have the steed or you'd have to add a seat. So describe how the 2 of you join forces. You and the chosen character both receive the following benefits as long as the sync remains active. So you both, when you perform a check, you can use the current attribute dice size of the other PC in place of yours. So you can choose that. So say, for example, if one of you is really good with dex and ints and the other one is really good with might and willpower, you can swap between, which is pretty cool. When you deal damage, deal extra damage equal to the strength of your bond towards the other PC plus the strength of their bond towards you. So you can constantly be dealing extra damage in like a tag team kind of situation. You may use an action to perform a free attack with one enabled or disabled weapon module present on the personal vehicle the other PC is currently on. So that only works for the first option where they've got their own vehicle. And when your turn ends, if the other PC is yet to take their turn during this round, they may take their turn immediately after yours, which is pretty cool. And then the synchronization lasts until the end of the scene, or until you or the other player characters die, fall unconscious, leave the scene, synchronize with someone else, or are no longer aboard your personal vehicle. So this is a way where, if you regularly have someone like to be in your machine, or you have a second pilot, that you can gain a bunch of extra benefits. So I really like it. But there's more to talk about before we talk about the pros and cons. So the next one is called Overload Burst. So let's just quickly find it. And an OP, like testing my alphabet. Overload Burst. Choose a damage type from bolt, dark, fire, ice and light, so not all of them. When you are reduced to 0 hit points for the first time during a scene, if you are driving a personal vehicle, you may choose to be reduced to exactly 1 hit point instead. If you do, you and any passengers leave your vehicle, which disappears from the game world. Then you may deal an amount of damage equal to your crisis score to a single creature you can see. This damage is of the type you have chosen from the list above. If your personal vehicle disappears from the game world in this way, the next use of your compression tech skill has an additional cost of a Fabula point. So compression tech is getting your vehicle back, right? So this is like a your vehicle explodes kind of thing. Really sorry, I'm trying to cough away from the mic. I hope you didn't hear it too bad. Yeah, so this is a way for like a safety net, so like if you're about to die, you can choose to have your vehicle explode instead, and that damages an enemy, which could be narratively fun, like especially if like that's a thing that finishes off an enemy. It's like quite cinematic and cool. But there's one more left to talk about, which is Steel Witch. No, stop right clicking. Too far. Steel Witch. So after you cast the first spell of your turn during a conflict, if you are driving your personal vehicle, you may choose one option after the spell has been resolved. You choose one enabled module and disable it, then choose the disabled module and enable it. So this is a way to kind of flexible configuration on the fly after you use a spell. Or the next spell you cast before the end of the scene that deals damage deals 5 extra damage, or the next spell you cast before the end of this scene that restores hit points to one or more creatures restores 10 additional hit points. So this is a way that if you are a spellcaster, whether you are offensive or healer, gives you extra stuff to do that, right? So there's a lot to consider with the pilot. It is crazy customizational. It is a lot. So if you are, I probably should have said at the start of the video, if you are new to the game, I strongly recommend you do not start with a pilot, because there's a lot to track, there's a lot to think about, especially as your vehicle stays the same throughout the entire game. But yeah, I really like the pilot. I like how customizable it is. I like how it interacts with like spells and weapons, and like I like how you can have your own weapons and have the personal vehicle have different weapons. I like the thought of riding vehicles. It's just with this, this is the character that can at most feel out of place in your world. Like I know, like the techno fantasy book itself, like not everyone's going to have a techno fantasy setting. They might want to use these, but like the mutant is just a character that mutates that can fit anywhere. They'd be like ostracized like in fantasy worlds, but like that's an easy thing to integrate. And then the Esper is just psychic powers, right? So that again is easy to integrate. Whereas if you are in a like fantasy setting that might not have a lot of vehicles, introducing a pilot with like a fighter jet, for example, isn't going to fit very well. So speak to your team and your game master if you are thinking of a pilot to come up with a setting appropriate personal vehicle and how that would work in the game, because obviously one of the modules you can equip is a machine gun, right? But this video is already long enough, so I'm going to leave it there. That is the end of going through character classes for now until another book comes out. Like I had a thought about whether I wanted to go through some of the what did he call it? Like there's some classes that are being worked through that are currently being play tested that aren't in a book, right? Like especially there's like a rework of the Arcanist, as well as things like there's a chef, and there's like one that deals with plants. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. There's a necromancer as well, but I want to stick with official released books, just so that they've been play tested properly and things don't change. So this is going to be the last character class until there's a new book out, and this book is fairly new, so it's going to be a while. I'm going to do the video on how this plays and how each of the classes plays with the other ones, like I did previously at the end of the core book. But then I'm going to start working on the monsters and how to make monsters and stuff like that, which I promise is coming. I've just been really busy having work making me redundant and finding a new job, but yeah, I've been talking too much. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.